Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Saturday, October 16th, 2021, and today I'm going to be talking about the state of Illinois and their excessively gerrymandered state that is going to be proposing and likely passing this new map that ultimately cuts down the number of Republican seats in the state from 5 currently down to 3. Now, the state of Illinois is amongst the states that are losing electoral votes as they move into the new election cycle, which means that the state of Illinois is going to have to redraw their maps primarily because they are losing a district. As many states do change up their districts time and time again, it is a little bit different because they are going to have to eventually cut somebody out of the midst. And likely it is going to be a Republican, as we now see in a new map that has been proposed by the Democratic Party in the state of Illinois. Now, this map is extremely gerrymandered, and I'm going to show you in just a moment, but the New York Times article doesn't seem to make it so as bad as it actually is. It says that the new map aims to grab 2 GOP seats in Congress, but if you take a look at the 2020 House election results, specifically in the state of Illinois, you will see that Democrats won 13 seats and the Republicans won 5. So if you're taking 2 away, that brings the number of Republican seats down to just 3 seats across the entire state, a state in which 41% of its residents voted for the Republican Party back in 2020. And when you take a look at the state of Illinois over its brief electoral history in the 21st century of being a pretty solid Democratic state, because in years past, actually, Illinois had been a Republican state and a moderately competitive state. In 96, it only went to Bill Clinton by 14 points, even though he won with over 370 electoral votes. But then by the time we had reached 1996, Bill Clinton won by around 18 points. But then in 2000, Al Gore won by 12 points. In 2004, John Kerry won by 10 points, and then Barack Obama ultimately shifted the state super far to the left, and it continued down that pathway. But you can see that 25 points in terms of that victory might possibly justify a map in which Republicans are only winning 5 of the seats out of the total 18 in the state. That's only 27% of the entire state itself in terms of the representation in Congress, but that might make a little bit more sense if a Democrat was winning by 25 points. But in the 2020 election, I mean, Illinois, still a safe state, was only won by 17 points. So when you have 41% of the state voting for Donald Trump, voting for Republicans, it really doesn't make sense that this map should be drawn in such a way. And I think that this map itself, and you can now see it, you can truly see just how gerrymandered it actually is. This map is proposed in a way that Democrats would have 11 Democratic-leaning seats. Republicans would have 3 seats in their favor. And the 3 highly competitive seats would be containing parts of Chicago and pretty much going through all the rural sections of the state, dividing the state into multiple Democratic areas. The 3rd district would be competitive with a Democratic lean of 3 points. Joe Biden won in this new district by 8 points across it. If you move over to the 14th district, Lauren Underwood, another Biden around 6, 7, 8 point victory there. The 14th district has a partisan lean of Democrat plus 2. And that final district, the 17th district, where this incumbent is actually retiring, the Democratic lean here is plus 2 as well. Now, these leans are relative to the rest of the nation. And if you take a look at the way that the presidential election went in 2020, Joe Biden won the popular vote by 14 points. By 4.5%. So when you have a victory of 4.5%, that means that the district itself is likely 6, 7 points more Republican if you're going from the median, you're going from the middle part of the country itself. So when you see that Democrat plus 2, that's relative to the popular vote of the 2020 election and the House popular vote. So that district itself is actually more Democratic than you might suspect, just based off that partisan lean index across the district itself. And I also want to point out that incumbency is always a major factor that allows you to win elections. So it doesn't really matter if the Democratic lean is only 2 or 3. Yes, these are opportunities for Republicans to technically pick up races, but it makes it more difficult, especially since many of these other districts are effectively cutting out Republicans across the state. For instance, in the 12th district, the 15th district, and the 16th district, these are where the incumbents remained. They drew a new district with Rodney Davis's, the 13th district, which now has a Democratic lean of plus 7. That's because they're including Springfield, a Democratic epicenter, huge source of population there. The Democrats took that district and made it more Democratic, because before it actually had a partisan lean of Republican plus 8. It was already a gerrymandered district, but Democrats were unable to tap into it. In the 15th district, the Republicans had a plus 50 lean there. In the 18th district, plus 29. And then in the 16th district, they also had a plus 20 victory. And in the 17th district, they had an advantage of R plus 5 and the 14th of R plus 3. So you can see how this map was drawn in a way where you will see all of these, maps, at least 7 of these seats had some type of Republican lean, which means that in years past, Republicans could have won there. For instance, if you take a look back at 2018 in these House elections, well, you can actually see that back in 2016, some of these districts were red. You can see that the districts on the right were considered to be solid for the Republican Party. I'm trying to find the pickups right here on the outskirts of Chicago. You can see that there were pickups for the Democratic Party in the 6th district and in the 14th district. Now, if taking a look at the new map, the 6th district is drawn in a way. Let's see if we can find it with a Democratic lean of +7, which already gives them that advantage before Republicans had the advantage. And then the 14th district, which we can see based off of the region right here, the new map for the 7th district, the 6th district, Democrat +8, and then the 14th district has Democrat +2 versus Democrat +7 and Republican +3. So what the Republican Party, I think, is going to react to this is essentially just combat this type of gerrymandering across their own states. I think that right now we are looking at this type of circumstance in which Democrats and Republicans are directly responding to each other in a very negative way. I think a lot of what we've seen in states such as Illinois and other battleground states where it seems as if the Democratic Party, or not necessarily battleground states, but states with the competitive districts, for instance, New York, or other states really where Democrats have control, they are trying to counteract what's happening in states such as Texas and Georgia across the United States. I think looking at Texas, the Democratic Party was truly upset looking at this House map because the new map would allow them to win only 34% of the districts if they hold all of the ones they are currently advantaged to win. And then if they were to win the only toss-up seat, it would bring that number to around 37%. Now, Democratic support in the state of Texas has been higher than 37% for quite some time now. In fact, from 2008 onward, Democrats have actually been much closer than 37%. Most recently, Joe Biden received 47% of the state vote in the state of Texas. That is a monumental victory. That is a very good thing for the Democratic Party. Not monumental victory, sorry. That is a monumental gain from just a simple 34% that the House of Representatives otherwise might make it seem like in the state of Texas. Texas does have that red reputation, that Republican stronghold idea behind it, but it truly is not, and it could become a blue state within the next 4 to 8 years. But the Republican Party is doing everything they can to prohibit the Democratic Party from making major advancements. Because when you take a look at the old map, you can see here that there were a number of highly competitive seats, mostly won by the Democratic Party, and then additionally Republican-leaning seats. But if you take these Republican-leaning seats plus these toss-up seats in a Democratic wave year, it wouldn't be unreasonable to see how the Democrats could actually win the majority of seats from the state of Texas. So effectively, the Republican Party took every single one of these competitive districts and made them Republican strongholds, leaving one toss-up district, one lean Republican district, and one lean Democratic district. The Democratic Party might be a little bit more happy because they have these toss-up districts in their favor, but otherwise than that, I mean, they already had these seats. They're not making any advancements, and this leaves them no room of possibility to make such advancements. Now, this Illinois gerrymander is a bit worse for the Republican Party. But also, you do have to understand that you are looking at a state that votes with, President Trump less than Texas does for Biden. So there is that idea that maybe they are equal gerrymander, just there is more Democratic support in Texas than there is Republican support in the state of Illinois. But this new map would effectively give the Democratic Party the majority, the overwhelming majority of representation from the state of Illinois if everything goes to plan. 27% of the seats here would be represented by Republicans. 27% out of 17 seats across the state. I mean, it's honestly quite laughable at that point to see 3 out of 17 be considered in such a way, and I think that that's something that the Democratic Party really needs to discuss amongst themselves because this is a gerrymander no matter the way you look at it. I mean, obviously they know that, but it is something that they need to recognize as them being hypocritical in a sense because they do tend to come out as the party that is against gerrymandering in full force on almost every level. And I actually misspoke. That is not 27% of the state's representation. 3 seats out of 17 districts would be a total of 17.6% in terms of representation, which means that the state of Illinois would be represented by 83%, 82% Democratic votes, Democratic support, even though back in 2018 even, you can see Illinois voted with the Democratic Party by only 22 points. In 2020, it was a margin of around 15, 16 points. A margin of 15, 16 points does not make up for a margin, or not equal a margin. That would be the final one by this map of a 60-point margin across the state itself. I mean, the state of Illinois, it has been gerrymandered before, but this is a whole nother ballgame. I mean, this is an entirely whole nother ballgame. You can see the old districts extremely gerrymandered within Chicago. They are trying to take that Democratic support and push it out into the more rural areas in order to gerrymander these districts in such a fashion. But looking at the proposed map, it goes to an entirely different extent. I mean, you can literally see how Chicago is taken from all the way in the city 3 hours away to the middle of Illinois up in the north. I mean, you can see exactly how this map has been drawn. And since the Democratic Party has entire control over how this works, they are going to be very lucky with the way that it ends up, and they are likely going to pass it, which I would not be surprised about. The Democratic Party recently won the governor election in the state of Illinois. They flipped it from the Republican Party, and they have control of the state delegation here. So this map is not going to be upheld to the highest type of scrutiny that you otherwise might see in a swing state or in a divided government state. The Illinois Democratic Party proposed this map, and it looks as if that it is going to pass. Adam Kinzinger, who is a very big opponent of President Trump, someone who actually won his election back in 2020. We can take a look at his House seat in the past in right on the outside, 16th district. I thought it was the 17th for just a moment. 16th district. I mean, you can see that the final results here was that Adam Kinzinger won with 66 or 65% of the vote. Now, he's the incumbent. He has been against President Trump. He really did not have that endorsement from President Trump or that type of support. It was quite surprising to see. I think there was a very lack of energy or lack of enthusiasm within this Republican primary. Number one, because he was the incumbent, and number two, because Donald Trump did not like him. So the Republicans actually got less votes of the Democrats in the primary, but by the time we had reached their general election, Adam Kinzinger really had no possibility of losing that election because it was a safe Republican area. But I do want to point out that looking at the 16th congressional district, Adam Kinzinger had said through 2022 that he was going to run for re-election. Well, he actually announced yesterday in response to these maps that he is still exploring options about whether or not he is going to run. And I think that's something that the Democratic Party won't necessarily be upset to hear, but I do think that they are going to lose out on a member of Congress who is an opponent of President Trump, someone who is representing the state. I mean, look at this 15th district. Look how much it covers, how much is actually gerrymandered across the state itself. But you can see here that he is going to face off, if he decides to run, against another incumbent, because there's no other place for him to run in. The number of Republican districts has been cut by nearly half. In addition, the number of seats across the state of Illinois has been reduced by 1. So when Democrats were looking who to scrap, they went towards the Republican Party. So Mary Miller would likely defeat Adam Kinzinger in the state of Illinois because of President Trump. I think that's something that is a huge thing for members of Congress, and Adam Kinzinger is now open to the possibility of no longer running for re-election in 2022. In fact, it says here that Adam Kinzinger, who is currently in a Republican-friendly held seat, had said before, let's see if we can find the exact quote about whether or not he was going to run, had said before for months that he plans to seek re-election to the House and dismiss suggestions that he'd run for governor against the Democratic incumbent or the Senate against Senator Tammy Duckworth. But on Friday, with his home drawn into a Democratic-heavy district with Representative Marie Newman, Mr. Kinzinger said he would consider seeking a different office. Quote, following the release of the new congressional maps for Illinois, my team and I will spend some time looking them over and reviewing all of the options, including those outside the House. He says that he's just talking options, but declined to elaborate when asked upon that. Essentially, I think that Adam Kinzinger is going to try to put himself in another type of office, whether it be the governor's office or the Senate race. Either way, he's not going to win. The unfortunate reality is his future solely relied in the United States House of Representatives, and Democrats were not kind to him by keeping him in a district. He is the incumbent, and this map was drawn in a way that if he was to be primaried, Democrats would not have to worry about someone who would be listening to President Trump and really beholden to him, I think, in terms of the control that he has over that representative. The Democratic Party, I think, is trying to play it safe here and trying to be completely on the offense. This is one of the most gerrymandered maps I have seen for this election cycle, and in fact, it might be the most gerrymandered map. It's certainly not the most gerrymandered map I've ever seen. I mean, a number of states currently have districts that are drawn in a much worse fashion than the one you see right here. But this is still not good. And I think that at this point in time, the Democrats were not lenient on Adam Kinzinger. And I think what they are trying to do is effectively combat what they expect to come out of states such as Florida and continue to expect out of Georgia and Texas, as we've already seen a little glimpse into what might happen in the state itself. When you take a look at actually the state of Georgia, in this new map, it's another situation in which the Democratic Party can only win 4 of these seats. Currently, they have 1 seat with a Democratic lean of +1. Before, it had a Democratic lean of +2. It has been drawn in a way that Republicans can absolutely win that 2nd district, effectively consolidating the Democratic support around the Atlanta metro area. But the problem is 75% of the state's population remains, or sorry, 2/3 of the state's population remains in that Atlanta metro area. But they aren't as Republican as this map might make it seem. You can see that the 6th and 7th district have Democratic representatives, and the 2nd district has a Democratic representative. Following this new map, it is very likely that the 2nd district has a Republican representative, and the 6th district will undoubtedly have one, as it has been drawn in such a way that Republicans have a partisan lean of +16 across the state itself. Democrats are trying to play on the offense in states such as Georgia, where they seem to see themselves losing a number of seats or potentially losing a number of competitive seats. Both parties are going completely brutal when it comes down to these new maps, and I'm not surprised in the least bit. I think that what we've seen so far from states that have already confirmed it, such as Indiana and Oregon, is that these states are not letting up. They are going to do everything they can to ensure that their own political party remains in power. And whether that means gerrymandering a map to a point where the opposition party representation is down to 17%, that just might be how it is. And I think that it never is good on either political party side, which is why I'm covering this, because the Democratic Party really made a very, very extreme gerrymander. But at the end of the day, I think that it is something that we are going to continue to see and will be extremely crucial in understanding how 2022 will evolve for that midterm election year. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2022 redistricting election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.